We're going to call the Air Shirley Regional School Committee meeting for Tuesday, February 4th, 2025 to order. Those attending tonight's meeting should be aware that the meeting is being audio and video recorded by APAC and ASRSD. Any audience members who wish to record any part of the meeting must inform the chairperson, who will announce the recording. This is to comply with the Mass Wiretap statute. The listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Per the ASRSD School Committee Policy, BEDH, public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between citizens and the school committee. It is a citizen's opportunity to express an opinion on issues of school committee business. Citizens will have 3 minutes to express their views. Any staff members addressing the committee are reminded of their obligation under state and federal student record laws with respect to maintaining the confidentiality of student record information and refrain from disclosing any personally identifying information regarding students. With that, we will call the meeting to order and we'll do the pledge. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Michelle, can we do the roll?
Mr. Bresnahan.
Here.
Mrs. Kennard. Mr. Quincy.
Here.
Mrs. Reshoots.
Here.
Mr. Ruprecht.
Here.
Ms. Van.
Here.
All right. We're going to start up with public comment. Do we have anyone on the phone? All right. Anyone in the room? All right. With that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. We've got regular session minutes for release and 4 warrants.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we vote for the consent agenda, the January 22nd regular session minutes, and AP warrant 1103 for $1,582.96. AP warrant number 1104 for $857,267.71. Payroll warrant 15 dated 1/24 for $1,084,021.95. I beg your pardon. And payroll warrant number 15.1 for $7,326.07.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion?
Or seconds.
Or seconds.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Yeah. We've got light attendance. We all need to vote on all of these.
Yeah.
All right. Moving right along, superintendent's report. Dr. Renda.
Thank you. So a district update. Earlier tonight, we presented the early stages of the fiscal year 26 budget to the select board in AIR. We were also asked to provide a refresher on the statement of interest for a new elementary school project. It seems like the board is still in favor. We will be going back to a select board meeting to get a vote on the feasibility of AIR funding a school building project. And we will be asking the school committee for approval to submit a statement of interest at the next school committee meeting. Sports update. This is submitted by Mr. Kendall. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Mr. Reshoots, but I will be reading it. The winter season is wrapping up. Congratulations to our track teams, both of whom captured league championships over the weekend. They will compete in the sectionals on Sunday at the Reggie Lewis Center. Boys basketball is 16-1 and won its second straight in third in 4 years Midland Wachusett Championship. They hope to qualify for the Clark Tournament and have qualified for the Division IV State Tournament. Girls basketball celebrated its 5 seniors last week. They host 2 more games, Wednesday and next Tuesday, and will play in the CMAS Consolation Round Vacation Week. Girls swimming capped an undefeated season with Midland Wachusett title last weekend and will compete at the sectionals this weekend. Air Shirley has 7 swimmers on the girls team and have several potential state champions. That's exciting. Boys ice hockey is 14-1-1 and on the verge of the conference title. The team has 4 regular season games remaining. Girls ice hockey is looking to secure a state tournament berth and currently has a record of 8-9. Wrestling and gymnastics have had successful first seasons. Chair has 3 competitions coming up to cap its season. Middle school basketball is wrapping up a successful season next week with home games this Thursday, next Tuesday, and Thursday. Unified Golf has 1 week remaining. And we have some new acceptances for college. Brandeis University, Colorado University Boulder, Huston University, Curry College, Regis College, and Rutgers University. And that is all for the superintendent's report.
Joyce?
Chair, kids going to the Reggie Lewis Center for those sectionals, that is quite a center in Boston, and it's a real honor and a real special treat for any of them to go there and compete in that. So that's quite good. It's all quite good.
It had an outstanding winter season. I mean,
Yeah.
potential state champions in swimming, boys ice hockey and boys basketball, both with only 1 defeat. I mean, that's outstanding. Track, boys and girls track won their leagues. I mean, couldn't ask for much more.
Dr. Renda, it's okay. I know that as part of your goals, we'll talk about it later. We are about a month into the year. Curious how the cell phone policy implementation is going 1 month in.
Well, it's funny you ask. I had a conversation with both principals. Seems to be a non-issue. They will both be coming to a school committee meeting soon, and we will give a formal
Right.
update with some data, but I'm not getting phone calls from anyone. The parents aren't reaching out. Teachers haven't reached out. The principals, who are both nervous about mid-year implementation, have both said that the plan worked really well, and we're not seeing any issues. I'm seeing phones in pouches when we're in classrooms. It doesn't seem... When we met with the administrators from Gardner, and they told us after 2 weeks this isn't going to be an issue, and we kind of thought it's probably going to be an issue no longer than 2 weeks. They knew what they were talking about. This really hasn't been. Now, I could be jinxing ourselves right now, but we'll have more formal data for you.
Yeah, I figured, I knew we would see more formally, and it's like, oh, we're at that 4-week mark. That's great.
We're always happy to field questions.
Yeah.
And especially when the answer's going to be, seems to be going
It
great.
seems to be going well, yeah. I mean, I would also assume that we would hear things both anecdotally and through you all if it wasn't going well, but, all right. Any other questions or comments on the superintendent's report?
Thank you.
All right, with that, preliminary budget update and discussion. Dr. Renda and Mr. Plunkett.
So I'm just really going to turn this over to Bill. We presented earlier tonight at the Select Board. All indications is that that was fairly well received, and Bill's going to do the driving.
So I'll show the slides if everybody wants to see them. I know everybody saw them once before, or mostly everybody saw them already.
Some of us, it takes a while to sink in, so.
We need some comprehension.
Yeah.
Are you tall enough to fix that wire?
So this is a slide deck we just showed to the Board of Selectmen and FinCom in air. First slide was just a visual to show that salaries and benefits are 70% of our budget, and there's not really a lot of anything else. Other expense, supplies, and services, about 31%. The cherry sheet estimates are out. We have the House budget is the middle column, and it's being compared to last year's cherry sheets. We have an increase of $283,000 in Chapter 70, and that's a huge increase for us this year. We've always been a minimum aid district since 2011 when we started, and with the state moving the foundation budget up and the required local contribution not really catching up to the foundation budget as fast as they'd like, they have to kick in more aid. So we're getting almost $8.9 million, and that's $283,000 over last year. We budgeted at 8.6. That was the governor's H1 last year, and we stayed with that. So we're seeing a big increase in Chapter 70, which is deducted right from our operating expenses in the general fund, and it helps to lower the assessments. So for receipts, we're $380,000 over last year, and for charges, there's only an increase of $29,000, so we're still $350,000 above where we were last year as far as projected revenues. These are estimates, and we have to go through a few more phases, but it's a good start. This is our drivers slide. We showed them. We plugged in the revenue at the top. I did go a little more conservative on a couple of the items. I didn't really agree with the governor's H1. I took FY24 actuals and then tweaked them down a little bit. And I think it's always good to go a little bit lower on revenue when you're budgeting. The middle section is all our drivers. It's health insurance, transportation, charter tuition out is a big number that was set by the governor. And that's another one we may be able to have some wiggle room there if we need to trim the budget at all, because we spent $850,000 last year on charter. Salary increases, of course, collaborative tuitions. We need to bump up a little bit because of a decline in circuit breaker. There was a small decline in circuit breaker funding. And the only other one that stands out really is McKinney-Vento. We ended up cutting $20,000 out of the McKinney-Vento line last year, and then they opened the shelter. And so we were scrambling the end of FY24 and into 25. We're doing a lot more cost share transportation with kids that have moved to the shelter from other cities in the state, and they are eligible to go back to their school of origin. So we do cost shares with quite a few districts now, and we are basically fronting the money, and then we'll get reimbursed at the end of the year from the state, but we are fronting it. The bottom section is 2 of our revolving funds that we use in the budget. They don't affect the assessment at all. Circuit breaker, like I said, is down a little bit. It's probably due to the number of students we have staying in district and being included, services being provided by the district instead of going out to placements. And then school choice in. School choice in, we have about 100 students, and school choice out, we have 100 students. So we're looking at $500,000 of tuition coming in. And going out, we budget a little bit more because there's also a sped increment for kids who are choicing out but have services at those schools. So they charge that back to the host district. So we budget a little bit more on that one. This is the Chapter 70 summary, right from the Department of Ed. And the top right, the first couple of rows is enrollment. You can see we're up 61 students. Total enrollment is 1,759 for FY26. The foundation budget is what the state calculates that Air Shirley needs to pay to educate 1,759 kids, and that is up 1.9 million. And the required local contribution that the towns need to pay, or that are scheduled to pay by the state, is up 1.3 million for this year. So that's part of the hit to Air. Air has a little bit higher assessment than Shirley, based on the percentages that we allocate the portion of the budget to each town, and the number of your required local contribution going up as well. You can see the graph at the bottom shows a very steady increase from let me go back here. From just under 20 million, now we're up to 25 million. So it's very slowly increasing, and they're trying to reduce that gap between required local contribution and the Chapter 78. So they are working on it, but it's a gradual project. This is the apportionment of both to Air and Shirley of the required local contribution, and the number of students, Air is up 69 and Shirley's down 8. So there's a $900,000, just under $900,000 increase for Air and $402,000 increase for Shirley. Air is part of the Air Shirley Regional District and the Neshoba Valley Technical High School. So part of that required local contribution gets split between the two districts. Actually, Air is down 8 students to Neshoba Tech. So they have a decrease in of 121,000 to the tech. And so that reduces their overall increase to their RLC to 778,000. So our budget total page, we have our last 2 fiscal years plus FY26 side by side. Put in the increases, the dollar amounts, and the percentages so everybody can see exactly what we're doing. When you look at this, the top section is the operating expense. We subtract the middle section, which is the revenue, 9.6 million, gets subtracted from the operating expense and gives you your assessment. It's 24,966, 285, 295. Sorry about that. And the last two slides I have is the assessment. We plug in the RLC, it gives us the numbers. For Air and Shirley, rows 2 and 3 are allocated by the regional agreement, and also the debt is. So those are the 3 pieces that go through the 5-year rolling average of foundation enrollment, and then the debt goes through a secondary calculation of how many kids are in the middle school, how many kids residents and foundation enrollment are at the high school, and we do a blend to come up with a secondary debt payment. So we had a 6.7 increase to Air overall and a 3% increase overall to Shirley. Air seemed pretty comfortable with the numbers. We didn't have any questions about the numbers, given that we really emphasized that the required local contribution went up significantly. And so the assessment is going to go up because that's the biggest piece of the assessment. But we had one question about choice, what we had in choice tuition, and we did draw it down last year, but we're planning on, we're going to be getting $500,000 of tuition in for the 100 students, and we have $550,000 budgeted for outgoing school choice.
It really is a wash. The other important thing here is, for both towns, the incremental increase to meet target is part of this assessment, and the debt. So the field debt and the middle school debt and the high school debt, middle school debt's off this year, after this year, right?
After FY26.
After FY26. So these are the numbers that include the debt and the incremental increase. And one of the things that's hitting Air this year is they had $300,000 to bring down that assessment, $150,000 for each of the last 2 years, and that's gone this year too. So that kind of brings that up. But one of the things that we made a point of, their required local contribution in Air is $899,000, and we're asking for $960,000. So we're really only asking for about $61,000 more. $899 and change, and we're only asking for $960. And I'm not sure for Shirley what's their required.
Theirs is 402,
and
402,000.
And their increase is
3% all in.
3%. But the number we're asking above the local contribution, it doesn't. I don't know if that's
which is lower than last
for me.
year.
It's lower, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Did I
Shirley was
misunderstand you?
3.2 last year, I believe.
And Air was
6 last year.
last year.
And then the last slide we had was just showing how big visually the required local contribution is for the assessment. only have 26% in between transportation and net school spending above RLC, plus the debt. Those are the three pieces that get allocated via the regional agreement. The RLC is set by the state. And that was it.
Seemed like it was pretty well received.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, last year we had very similar numbers for the assessment, but that was with $350,000 of E&D being used. We're presenting this tonight with no money being used from E&D.
For what?
Excess
Right,
and deficiencies, right. So it is,
Indeed.
we are optimistic about the Chapter 70 funds, the local contribution, and our plan to continue to move positions from revolving accounts into the general fund. We'll be able to continue to do that.
Is there, I think we're only like 3 months away from the vote, but is there any interest in either the FinComs or boards to have that mass presentation?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm going to have to reach out to them and ask.
They have a lot of new members.
We have the presentation ready to go.
Yeah.
We originally wanted Mars to present the presentation.
Right.
What Mr. Hemming did was help us create the presentation, so that would be delivered by Mr. Plunkett and I.
Right.
And when when it got shifted to us, well, I think we lost a little bit of steam, but I will reach out to both the
If you could,
FinComs
yeah.
and offer that.
I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, I think we would probably open that
Yeah, and it's,
to everybody.
this is a good year to do it? Okay.
That's true.
So I would much rather do it this year.
That is true.
Do they have a bunch of new members on the air selectmen, or is that some of their finance committee there
The
too?
FinCon was up there too.
Oh, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out, like,
Yeah, 3 selectmen, and the rest were all FinCon,
Ah.
except for Carly. Carly and Robert were up there too.
yeah. They almost couldn't get around the table. That they're gonna bump you guys out, so we have more room.
Any questions or comments? Erica, are you good?
And we're in Shirley on Monday,
6
taking this on the road.
o'clock? Or 7?
I'm not sure in Shirley.
I can tell you in just a moment.
6.
And where in Shirley again? Just in
Town
Town
Hall.
Hall?
Yeah.
Should be 6 p.m.
It is. It's 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
All right. Great. Okay, moving on, Policy FF, naming new facilities. We are on to a third read, maybe vote. Erica, any
Sure.
context?
So all I did was I included the update. So where you see the blue items, in the top area underneath the policy, I figured placing the stipulation for naming at the time of accepting gifts. That is in blue. And then the other is in the procedure number 3. I just updated with the different terminology that was requested. But that, and then the red section that has a line through it is just because that was the former wording we had from Read 2. But that's all that I've done as far as updating the policy based upon the recommendations from last time.
Great. Jim?
Just 2 items. One, I said I would put something in for the recognition on the presentation. So I thought this would be best placed. I mean, I'll just read it out. But on the second page where you have criteria for naming recognition, you have 2 bullets: substantial contributions and embodiment of excellent attributes. Right, and I thought I would put this as a third bullet in that section that says recognition presentation. After the formal approval of a naming acknowledgement, A plaque or certificate detailing the contributions made, an example exhibited by the honoree, is to be permanently on display at the site being named. The specific details and design considerations to be included will be determined by representatives of the honoree and the district superintendent. That basically means if you're going to name something after someone, there has to be a reason behind it that, because in reality, nobody knows these people after a couple of years. You have no idea why that person's name is up there, but if it passes through the bar sheet and makes significant contributions, there's still something to be learned from their career or whatever they did to accomplish their standing. So I just wanted to make sure that that message is out there, because that message is the one thing that's enduring.
You know what? I'm sorry, Jim. I do remember you saying that last time, and I did forget to add that portion because I remember us discussing that. So, I mean, if we do vote on it, I mean, I'm more than happy to make that addition as long as it's included in the motion. I have no problem with that.
Both 60.
Can we just...
They pay over the RLC.
I know, but...
Oh, sorry.
I'm just wondering what Shirley...
Can you read it one more time? And the reason I just am like going back to the example of if we were to name
because
the middle school,
local contribution.
the JFK middle school, would you have a, like underneath the name of the school, would you need to have a plaque? Like, should we have something that's like where appropriate or something? You know, like, I don't know if we want to give a clause to.
Yeah, it wouldn't have to be, I mean, if you suppose you name the middle school, the JFK middle school,
Yeah.
then probably somewhere in the entry there would be this.
Yeah.
That would be determined by the honoree and the
Yeah, okay.
district superintendent to make sure that it was accessible and appropriate.
Yeah, okay.
That and the other was the, I floated last week so everybody could consider, I feel that we'd be better if we didn't have the procedure stuff for naming the ASRSD facility. I thought that we didn't really need to have that there.
What's this?
Discussion.
It's over.
Naming suggestion procedure is the only.
Thank you.
The request for naming ASRSD facility is fine, and I just thought that the naming suggestion procedure was not really necessary and would just sort of happen on its own anyway. Most of these don't, you know, they don't happen with the school committee deciding that, hey, we really need to name something. That isn't usually how this whole thing goes down. So I didn't think that not that we couldn't do that, and we could just sort of be quick on our feet if we decided to do that, but I just thought that was superfluous to what we were trying to accomplish. Those are my only two changes to what we had before.
Questions or discussion? Joyce?
So it seems to me, and Chris is the point man on this, that we had some policies where we did have a procedure thing with it in more than one policy, which kind of seemed sometimes a little strange, but there must have been a reason for it. You know, am I wrong? Have those all been taken out?
So in most of our policies where they were strictly a procedure, we removed the procedure because a procedure is not a policy. It was the thing that Dorothy Presser said time and time again.
Yeah, I just, 'cause I remember historically, like there were procedures all over the place.
There were procedures all over the place. How to put kids on the bus was in our policies.
Was it really?
Yes. We have taken that out. That was
We've taken
removed,
that.
so we don't. I think, but that doesn't mean you can't detail this. I think part of the rationale, I don't want to speak for Erica, but part of the rationale that was the committee had discussed in 2020 was thinking about if someone wanted to name the middle school, there would be some effort to engage the community to let them know we are planning to name the middle school. I mean, you could, we have a suggestion, but there'd be an opportunity for others to say, wait, I've got an idea. I don't want it to be JFK. I want it to be middle school face.
I'm going to jump off the cliff here.
Yeah.
So when we did name the middle school, the Shirley Middle School,
Yeah.
we took it to the voters with suggestions, and we had actual public voting on naming that school, which Shirley Middle School won out over a number of other good ones, but one that I was in favor of. But, you know, so we could do that again on something that was big. You know, so I mean.
Not if this was the policy.
Well, with that procedure?
Or with that procedure, I think we.
Because I didn't quite understand
Yeah,
where I was going with it.
So with this current procedure that's outlined in the policy, someone would come, or the school committee could say, we want to name this building, this
You make it
room,
public.
this, right.
Yeah.
We would announce it at a meeting. The superintendent would, you know, again, it would go in Adam's update. We are planning to name X, Y, and Z facility, so that others could weigh in or join public comment. And then at a meeting, we would consider the options in front of us, and then the school committee would ultimately choose and announce the name. I suppose we could have a town election mixed
Well, I think
into that
we
procedure.
had-
It's regional, is it both Air and Shirley?
Right.
But I don't know why we-
Right. There's other things to be considered there. And I think the danger is that you say, okay, we're going to name this, who's the guy who did the
Appalachian Trail.
Appalachian Trail. There was a strong component that people wanted to name it after him, because he had been in town forever and did the Appalachian Trail. It was kind of a big thing. And there was a lot of force for that. So, I mean, when you have a procedure like that where you're going to be bringing it out, then it doesn't matter if we're naming maybe the table in the cafeteria, but if you have something that's going to impact your whole community, I don't know, you know, because that became very important to people when we did the middle school.
Kevin?
I think if you wanted to do that, you probably would have the option. I wouldn't want to put it in our policy that we had to do that. Because that could really complicate.
Well, then how do you write in the option?
I think
so
you-
that people
you
know
wouldn't
that
have
there's
to
an
have it
option
in the
there.
procedure, but you could probably always make the decision to go an extra
Yeah,
step.
or to back up a step and say, you could not. It's,
If the naming is in the purview of the school committee, then
The way
I
we
would keep
solicit
it.
the, yeah.
yeah,
I would
but
rely
we
on,
solicited, if I'm not mistaken, we solicited the total input of the community, because I think we actually came down to some kind of vote, and I don't remember how it was done, but that's, okay, I don't remember anything.
it's a messy venture at best, but I would rely on the Fleet of Foot School Committee at the time to be able to survey the landscape and come up with something that looks plausible. But I not knowing the situation, it's hard to come up with what I think would be the best policy for how to do it. I think whoever's sitting in the chair at that time would just do as good as they can, and I would just trust them to do it.
So what I'm hearing, and I would, Erica, I want to make sure you can jump off mute and contribute too, is if you want the flexibility to say, sometimes we want to have an election and put it to town, sometimes we just want to handle it here.
Well, you wouldn't
Like-
say election, but solicit input from
Sure,
the
but what I'm
community.
saying is if you want to have the flexibility, you should not outline a procedure,
Okay.
would be my recommendation, right?
So then you have a school committee who says, oh, we're going to name it this, everybody else just take a flying leap.
Yes, you could, that school committee could do that. I don't, yeah. You could have a school committee full of jerks
I mean,
and they want to name it after themselves.
First thing,
All of a sudden, everything is going to be the Chris Ruprecht Academy. I mean, you could have
some
that,
faith.
Already halfway there.
the who?
so,
The who?
Chris Ruprecht Academy. I mean, I think it sounds great.
That's catchy.
Okay, so
Sorry, Erica, I know it's hard to follow.
I think I'm following what you all are saying, but I guess my interpretation is this policy or the procedure would only be followed if an outside community member came in and made the naming suggestion, not that this would be a consistent policy that would be followed each and every time. So essentially what we're doing is this is like a policy for a contingency. right? Now, if it doesn't read that way, then that's one thing. But essentially, if you think about us creating policies, that's exactly what this is for. If in fact someone came and requested to have something named, this would be the procedure that we would follow. That's the only reason why we have a procedure attached to this policy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have one.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I believe with new facilities, that is not replacing an existing school. It is part of the MSBA building process. They bring in a whole slew of community members to do a school vision. And I believe there would be recommendations for naming, which would then be brought to the school committee.
Yeah, it wouldn't be just up to the school committee, not all mine.
Well, it would be.
The approval would be.
Yeah,
but
the
where
approval would be.
What I'm saying
But
is
it
like
can be
where the
part of that
suggestion-
process.
Yeah, so
Right.
what I'm saying is within this procedure, like it is outlining, here are the 4 steps or 5 steps to request a name and 4 steps for actually deciding on a name. You could have steps presumably you could take actions between these steps, but if you want to have flexibility to say, we're going to do something slightly different for the library, the table in the cafeteria, or a school building, having a step 1, 2, 3, 4 doesn't give you,
But it does say naming suggestion procedure, so I think
Okay,
that's meant
yeah.
to give you some flexibility. It's not that this is absolute. I would keep it in because I think it gives you steps.
Yeah.
It does say it's a suggestion. It's not a requirement to follow it. And what is much more frequently going to happen is you're going to hear a number of complaints after you've named something from various parents that said, hey, I wasn't aware of this. I should have been involved. Like, how did you make this decision? How did you decide on the naming? You point to this and say, well, we have a procedure as part of our policy. We followed this. You can see it here, right? And it helps you respond to
Right.
this.
Yep,
And that happens probably pretty much every time.
sure.
So I think
I'd love if we had some complaints show up for public comment. It would.
Oh, go ahead, Chris. As long as you're chair, you can.
Yeah. So I am more than fine if we want to keep things. One question would be around under naming suggestion procedure number 4, official naming will occur at the second regular meeting following the initial announcement. Do we want to be that rigid that we're going to have an initial announcement opportunity for input? Like if there's, is that
I would
too,
just scrap 4.
like if we just drop second and we just
Who knows
say
how messy it's going to be.
official naming will occur at a
We're
following
just
meeting? Or just,
No, I think you could have an announcement and then you make a formal vote on your second meeting, just like you have 2 readings of your policy.
or
okay?
sometimes 3.
Or sometimes 3.
So I guess what I'm saying is number 4 does feel very rigid.
Yeah. What if we just struck it?
Would you like me to change it similar to the change that I made for 3? Because if you notice, I said like a maximum of 3 school committee meetings, right? So we kind of have that kind of following school committee, and then we put the cap at, it'll be no more than 3 school committee meetings after. You see what I'm saying, where I made the change for 3? Like, do you want me to make all of the verbiage that way to where we have a general sentence, and then I can put a cap on the end of it so that we give ourselves flexibility, but also accountability?
We'll give any committee.
And you can
not
add the
just
word
us.
should.
Should.
Should be within 3 following school committee.
Yeah, if we have the word should
Okay.
there, that's okay, because I would, again,
Yep.
I think we've voted on naming 2 things since I've been here. But if it happens
Yeah.
and there is again, we want to have I can imagine a scenario where we make the announcement, we have a meeting, and there's some dialogue, and we want to have some amount of engagement. Like it can, and not that we want to have a meeting, there's a subcommittee or there's a group that's working on something, we want to give them space to be able to do that in that event, and we can point to it should. The reason it's not is because, right? Like ideally we're doing some intentionality. So I think even if we replace the word will with should,
should.
That
Okay,
would,
I can do that.
that should cover us.
Two other wordsmith things. One on the naming suggestion procedure. School committee will announce, instead of its intent, because it may not be our intent at all. School committee will announce, how about a request to name a facility? It may not be us. It could, if it's a third-party thing. We want to make sure that everybody has access to it. Now, if it's a request, it could be from us, but that's just something to think about. And the other thing is, and this is a semantic argument, but is it naming suggestion procedure or naming procedure suggestion? It can be different.
Yeah. I don't want to, well, I'll let Erica, I'm not going to speak for Erica.
What do you think, Erica?
I'm sorry, can you say it just a little bit louder? Because it kind of went in and out and I don't want to misunderstand you.
The first comment was, the school committee will announce its intent, and it may not be our intent at all. It might be just something that's placed before us that we have to deal with.
Okay.
So I just said it will announce a request. And even if, I mean, the request should come from us as well, so that's okay, I think. And then the other one, the intent of that 4 steps, if you look at it, is it a naming suggestion procedure or is it a naming procedure suggestion? Which gives you much more flexibility.
I see.
Okay.
And I'm open,
I see what you're
I'm open
saying.
to either of those, really.
Yeah, I would put procedure for, like, I see what you're saying, for naming suggestions so that we can give ourselves flexibility. So I think what I'm hearing, like, as a whole, is maybe just reviewing the procedure to make sure that it's not as rigid, that we do have flexibility as we move forward, because essentially what we're doing is a procedural outline to point to and to operate from.
Right.
So I agree with that, Jim. I can see where you're going there. And I think the general consensus seems to be that way, that, you know, in a 4th iteration, just make sure that we're not kind of painting ourselves into a corner with our verbiage. And then also with especially the verbiage centering around the procedure. Does that sound correct?
Yep. And I'll give the, did you get me when I read the addition for the 3rd bullet for criteria for naming recognition? Or I'll just hand it.
I did.
I'll just hand it to Michelle and you can patch it in the end.
So I'm actually creating right now the 4th iteration, and I'm going to share it in Word. And then that way, it might be a little bit easier. So that way I can make sure that I'm capturing, you know, you can capture what you're trying to write down, just because I want to make sure that I get it in there and in there correctly.
Okay, no.
Erica, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Eric.
We should be able to vote on this next meeting.
Which is only next Monday.
We should not be voting on this next Monday. If we do, that's a problem.
Oh, I thought, never mind.
That's the finance.
Go back.
Yep. Sticking with policy, proposed revision to policy IKF, graduation requirements. Mr. Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your packet, you have an updated graduation requirements version that's there. I took the suggestions from this group. I also looked at what is published in our high school handbook and our high school program of studies, and figured that it would make sense to include that grid that spelled it out, because it didn't spell it out. The older policy didn't have a clear picture of what those credits looked like. So I wanted to clean that up. And I also took the liberty of taking the chart that was there about the requirements of advancing to the next grade and turn that into a bit of a narrative component to make the policy shorter so it fits on one page for access. Other than that, there were no major changes to policy IKF.
Do we outline the community service requirement in the student handbook?
Yes.
I know that the requirements for community service and credits towards graduation don't change often. But if you were to write those bullets, complete credits towards graduation as articulated in the student handbook, or complete the community service requirements as detailed in the handbook, then when you make changes, if you were to make changes in the handbook, you would not need to go back and fix the policy, because we are reviewing and approving the handbook
The handbook
as
becomes a
a,
policy.
well, no, the policy is that you need to complete the credits towards graduation as
Right.
articulated in the handbook, which we approve.
Right.
But it means that you don't need to worry about version control. You don't have to, but that, as someone who found many surprising things in policies over the last few years.
I agree.
We can make those changes.
If that's what you want to do,
Yeah.
I don't have any reason to say no. I haven't seen a lot of graduation requirements that have looked like that, but I can't say that I've looked at a lot of them.
Yeah.
So if it's the committee's will to make it part of the handbook, then that's fine. That makes this policy much shorter.
I mean, others, folks should weigh in on that, but that is, again, as much as we can just refer back to a single source of truth and not have situations where handbook says one thing, policy says another.
Are you just simply thinking of that one item, or are you thinking of the whole policy?
No, I was thinking specifically for the first bullet, change the first bullet to read, complete the credits towards graduation as articulated in the student handbook. Complete, the second bullet read, complete the community service requirement as detailed in the handbook. Meet the competency determination in accordance with school policy IFKA. And then you could remove the table, and you could remove the community service requirement. And,
By
yeah.
and large, I mean, those types of things that are in the student handbook are picked from the policy manual. You sort of, I mean, you don't just hand a kid a policy manual, you just sit there and you're like, right, the things that affect you from our policy manual are here. But the controlling document is usually the policy.
Is the policy command.
Right.
This comes first.
So I mean, you could still say that in the handbook, but I would still keep that as in the policy manual.
I would keep it in the policy manual too. We can always. go
Chris,
back
I have a,
and review.
sorry.
Go ahead, sorry, Erica.
Okay, I understand what both Jim and you were saying, Joyce. What I was wondering is not only based upon Chris's recommendation, the reason why I had agreed with that was I was thinking that, and Charlie, correct me, maybe it doesn't matter, but I thought it would give you far more latitude to do what you needed to do at your level, since, you know, the handbook we know changes and gets approved every year, but let's say that there's something that happens, you know, mid-year or something like that, wouldn't the correction of the policy with the way that Chris suggested it provide you far more latitude? Not that there may be many changes you have to make, but wouldn't that give you more flexibility with the, I don't know what to say, like stamp of approval from the school committee and the policy? Or does that not assist you at all?
I think it's fine. I mean, I just looked quickly at some of the policies on MASC, and some schools have a grid and others do not. So it's really the will of the committee. So does it provide us with flexibility? Absolutely. Because we'll just bring it back in the handbook in August.
Yeah, I mean,
and sign off on it.
we have the same flexibility with the policy as we do the handbook. The reality is we can change policy tomorrow if we want to.
Yep.
My sort of question was like, what is the source of truth, and do we have multiple versions? And
Yeah.
I know we like to go back to policy, but the reality is, like we have seen when we did an audit, there are many times where we have conflicting information between policy and handbook. And it's because we
Yes.
But we fixed all that now.
we did fix it by taking out the things that
Yeah.
don't include, right? Like we took all the things out in our current policies that are covered in the handbook. So we can put this in and say, as a committee, we want the policy to be the source of truth, not the handbook. Again, our committee is approving both of those documents.
Right, they should be the same.
And they should be the same. We just don't maintain our policies annually. Joyce?
So consider is the handbook readily a public document for the public?
Yeah.
I would say more,
readily.
yes, they sign it every year.
Because
They-
you can go online and read all our policies.
You can go online and read our entire
You can go
handbook.
on and read the entire,
I would assume that our handbook is read or referenced a lot more often than our policies are.
well, because most of that's by students and student parents. I'm
Right.
thinking about the greater, quick review of what does Air Shirley do. That's all I'm thinking about.
I would assume that if your average citizen who does not have a student in the schools and is not employed by the schools search graduation requirement Air Shirley, they would probably stumble upon our handbook before they came upon our policies.
It's just that if I'm going to choice a kid in to high school, this is the quick thing I want to know. Not the whole program of studies yet, but just how is this marking up with school over here and their requirements? And is my kid really strong in math? You know, that's all. That's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Just a kind of a duplication, but is it a bad duplication?
And if someone were to come upon, in that example, if I'm a parent in Lunenburg and I'm like, you know what, I've heard great things about Air Shirley, I might want to send my kids there, and I were to search graduation requirements Air Shirley, let's say I do come upon the school committee policy, and it says, please refer to the handbook for the credit requirements or the community service requirements, it points me where to go. What would be worse if I'm a parent from Lunenburg, I go to the policy and I read this, it's 4 years out of date.
It's not going to be 4 years out.
You say that, Joyce, but I read things that were 10 years out of date. So I think that is the rationale that I would point to, is like, we want people to get accurate information.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just like to be as open as possible.
I agree. I don't want to hide anything, and again, I am one vote out of 5.
I
so-
endorse it. Mr. Caleri.
I'm on board. I think it makes a lot of sense, because we have to bring the handbook back every year anyway, and we have to bring the program of studies back, and both of those documents are going to have the same information in it.
And if it were to change, one thing that I appreciate and I thank every time is we get a highlighted note in the cover letter saying, we have made this change for you to review. And so I would assume that, again, we are going to be well aware of any changes that do impact graduation requirements. So, I don't know if there's other discussion. Again, it's a perspective, strongly stated, moderately held. Other comments on IKF?
So if I may,
Yeah.
so I'm adding, instead of in the table below, I'm adding in the student handbook, in the formal name of the handbook.
Yep.
And the
I'm
date
remo-
of the date of the handbook?
Nope,
Just-
Is there a reference like that?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't think so, because
No,
that's going
I
to
don't
change
think so
every year,
either.
right?
Yep.
Remove the table and the pieces that are associated with the table.
Mm-hmm.
And the promotion criteria can move to the handbook as well. And all the community service information moves to the handbook. So
That's right.
essentially, the policy is the top paragraph, and students transferring to ASRHS.
Yep.
I'm good with that.
Those amendments?
I would
Entertain a motion?
entertain a motion if folks feel good to vote on that. I'd entertain a motion anyway.
I will
One kind
make
or the
a
other.
motion, Chair, to approve the graduation requirements with the amendment as just outlined by Mr. Cleary.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any abstain or nays? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Moving along, we have policy IKFA. Any headlines before we dive in?
Yep, the only, we made 2 additions, and I should have highlighted them, but the whole thing is a new policy, so I apologize. The second bullet in the middle, where it says successful completion of grade 9 and grade 10 humanities courses. We added a sub-bullet that says successful completion of English language development 1 or 2 can substitute for 1 ELA course. We also added, below all of the bullets, we added for a student who has not earned a competency determination following the criteria above, a student may participate in an alternative review process with a team led by the high school principal. The team will include the assistant principal, the student's counselor, the curriculum leaders in the subject in question. Additionally, a special education teacher or ESL teacher will be included as necessary. Other than that, there are no other changes on this version.
Joyce?
Have we had any clarification yet on that last paragraph? On the subtext there below the kid graduating? With the prior thing, has the state come out with any guidance or anything on that?
On their FAQs,
On
the-
going back,
on their FAQs,
FAQs?
their frequently asked question
Oh,
document
thank you.
that governs the competency determination.
All right.
There is a question on there that says, does this apply to anybody prior to which the response is yes. So the expectation is that there is some sort of a process.
So do they have the process yet?
No,
Have they outlined it? And is it really a requirement?
they don't have the process, they do not have a process for this outlined, but they do not have a process outlined for any of this, for any school district. Like any of the competency determination, any of the information. They haven't provided any guidance on this.
So I checked into this a little bit, and there was a feeling that no one knows what they're doing yet on this. So in review of that, should we keep reviewing this policy and updating it?
We can't.
If I may, we need a policy this year
I know you
to get
need
us
it.
through this year.
Okay, I know you need the top part. That's definite. That's what the state first asked for, was they asked for a competency determination document, which is what everything else is in this. The last paragraph is not a competency determination, because the other competency determinations that you might be doing may not apply only to this year forward, right?
Can you say that again?
Okay, so I go back and I didn't do a successful mathematics thing. So do we have to look at all their records to see if they meet the current competency or not? I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. You're talking about 20 years of,
With all due respect, can I just stop? I understand where you're coming from, Joyce. And I think it's because you don't have context because you weren't a student at that time. I was.
yep,
So I want to give you context as to how it was at that point. It was irrespective of the grades that you got in class, you did not pass MCAS, therefore you do not get a diploma. That was the measure and modicum. Your English and your math MCAS score would create a situation where you were not eligible for your diploma. So with this law now being pulled back, if you will, or I can't think of the correct terminology. If a student at that time, from 2003 to present, did not get their diploma because they did not pass the MCAS math or English, they now are able to get their diploma. It's like, that's the criteria. Irrespective of that, there is absolutely no reason, and I want to be clear on this as a school committee member, why any student should not get their diploma if the criteria is they did not get their diploma because they did not pass MCAS. Point blank, period. Regardless of what the state has to say, I am saying as a school committee member, I would find that outrageous that we would not go back and award a diploma for a student who did not get their diploma because they did not pass MCAS. So I think that this is a very simple answer when we can recognize and empathize with the fact that in the past 10 years, there may have been a student who did not get their diploma because they did not pass MCAS, and award it to them so that it could positively impact their future.
So it would only be, in respect, and is the state going to do that?
It would be us.
It would be us?
Sorry, Charlie, I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah,
So-
we
so
have the
Eric-
power to, according to this, I mean, the state does not want to be looking back in our records to see what's happened anywhere, times every school in the state. They're expecting that each district is going to take a look back, and it won't be easy, but try to identify anyone that might benefit from this. The intent is for us to review it and make an appropriate determination whether a diploma is going to be issued or not. Because we're the people that issue the diplomas. And right now, they just took it and put it back in our lap. So now we get to pretty much run the way we want to run to determine who's going to get the tag. So we can do what we want.
And the reality is, if there is more information that becomes available as this goes on, you can always come back and revise the policy.
Yeah.
Right.
But it seems as though the intent of the voters and the advice from the Department of Education is that there's an obligation on local school committees to award diplomas to kids who did not earn them for failure to have passed MCAS.
Don't misunderstand, I don't have any problem with the kid getting a diploma.
Of course.
Don't misunderstand where I'm going with this. What I'm thinking of is from 2003 to 2025 is a lot of years to cover. And in this district particularly, where we had a large influence from Devon's at that point, where these people are not sitting on Maple Street, it becomes just a huge burden. I mean, do you
There
put out
are-
a public announcement and let people come
Well,
forward?
Adam, why don't you jump in?
Though it is 20 years, there will not be many students who did not receive a diploma for not passing MCAS.
Okay.
It won't be that large of a number. The other, and Erica is correct, the other important thing to remember is they still would have to have met all other requirements.
No, I
So
know.
if you failed freshman year, if you if you did not pass the math classes that you needed to pass to meet the competency determination, we would not be awarding you a diploma because simply that the MCAS requirement is gone. Most of the time, it's very rare that there's a student who didn't meet, is not getting a high school diploma simply because
of
they didn't
MCAS.
fail, just because of MCAS. There's usually other factors in that too. So our part of what we would do is do our best to identify the students who did not receive a diploma because of MCAS, and then
Look
determine
at
it.
their record.
Right, yeah.
My assumption is because the sort of second half of that paragraph we've been talking about names that Spencer, Charlie, and then depending on students identified, either their high school counselor or the counseling director. I'm assuming that like or counseling directors because we might not have a student from 2005's, right? I'm assuming you're proposing this because you are confident that you can manage this over the course of the next few months. Okay.
And I wanted to establish some sort of a
Yeah,
process
great.
that would be aligned.
Kevin?
I'm being, there's a very small typo in the first sentence. The previous competency determination requirements will be able to be considered, I think is what that.
Where are you on the document, sorry?
On that last paragraph, first
Okay.
sentence, second row,
Okay,
right in the middle. Too.
got it. Yep.
I just think it's such a load that, it's not going to be swift. Good luck.
I mean, the obligation at this point is not on the district to identify all of the students. So we're going to go through the process and kind of find out what that information is. But if former students learn of this and say, hey, can I get my diploma? That will start the process. Sure, we'll look at yours first.
And it's required by law. I think that we do this.
No, this is required by law. The competency determination is what they're pushing for.
I think it's.
Right.
The last paragraph is part of the law.
Yeah.
Is it part of the law?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're going to be
Yeah.
copacetic.
We could
Giving
brush
out
out the
diplomas.
Schoolhouse Rock, but I'm
It's a nice
pretty sure. Further, yeah,
Oh, I was going to make a motion.
I would love it.
It's on the troublemaker. I'll
Mr.
make a
Chairman?
motion.
Okay, be my guest.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we pass policy IFK-A on February, where are we, on the 4th? Competency, IKF? Oh, what did I say? Dash A?
Yeah, you said
I didn't have my glasses on, I'm sorry. Competency determination as in our packet tonight.
Do we want to make a motion to accept the typo that Kevin caught?
As amended.
Amended, great.
As amended by, what's your name?
I second that.
All right. All those in favor of passing?
Aye.
Great, thanks, Erica. Aye.
Jim
Jim
said.
seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now try again. All in favor?
I heard many ayes. All right, we are moving right along. I don't have any chairperson's notes. Are there any other topics not reasonably anticipated?
Mr. Chair, one quick update. We have parent-teacher conferences for the middle school and the high school this Thursday. There is a possibility of a weather event that could affect those. If we have no school or we have to cancel evening activities, we will be shifting those to all virtual. Parents will be getting links sent out to them tomorrow. If that does not work for them, they are more than welcome to contact their teacher to reschedule something in person.
And I will say that the communication around the middle school conferences was fantastic this last go-round, so. We don't have Ashley, I won't make Erica do it on the phone. We don't have a lot of announcements, I will read them.
Kevin is.
Oh, Kevin's.
Chris can.
I was trying to remember the order that we go in. I thought it was Ashley.
I thought I had you.
All right, this Thursday, the 6th, we have evening conferences for grades 9 through 12. Also, this Thursday, February 6th, we have a 90-minute early release for grades 6 through 8, only for conferences. Lunch will be served. Dismissal time for the middle school is 12:45. Friday, February 7th, a 90-minute early release for grades 6 through 8, only for conferences. Lunch will be served. Dismissal time for the middle school is 12:45. Monday, February 10th, the Air Shirley Regional School District presents FY26 budget to Shirley Select Board and Finance Committee, 6 p.m. at the Shirley Town Hall. Wednesday, February 12th, School Committee meeting and FY26 public budget hearing, 6:30, Middle School Library. Monday, February 17th, no school in observation of Patriots' Day. Tuesday, February 18th through the 21st, no school for February break. And Thursday, February 27th, a 90-minute early release for grades K through 12, late start for preschool, lunch will be served, dismissal times, high school at 12:55, middle school at 12:45, Law and Page Hilltop will be at 1:45. We will do a quick executive session, and so I would...
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we adjourn to executive session. It's only to come back to open session to adjourn.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.